Good evening, people. How are we doing? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's okay. We are live. We are back. We're live yesterday, we're live Thursday, and we are live today for our regular show. I don't know if you lot thought I was going to be off or something, but we're going to keep it. Like I said, Sundays is always going to be the same. So we've had two nice little QPR live shows, more like three, if you want to call it, if you want to tune into the Saturday watch along, if you did. But yeah, do you know what? We got quite a bit to talk about. Hopefully you're all okay. Hopefully you enjoyed the watch along yesterday. QPR, obviously in Austria doing the tournament, well, not the tournament, the tour, where they played Vienna yesterday. We've got in chat, we've got Seed, another live stream, yep. And H Football Heidi B, how are you? Hopefully you're both okay in the chat. Probably don't know if we'll see anyone else in the chat today, but yeah. But first things first, what I want to say is this. So yesterday's game, let's talk about yesterday's watch along, the game against Vienna. So obviously QPR drew 0-0 yesterday against Vienna in Austria. Very obviously the first game of this, well, first game preseason is always going to be a bit awkward, you know. Julian is just literally just basically seeing what his team can do under the, I would say, under the regime of maybe new setup or new tactics or something like that. First 10 minutes was a bit wobbly at times, you know. Vienna was attacking us a little bit, but I think the main thing that we wanted to focus on and look at was the defense. You know, the attack seems to be okay, but the defensive issues is what we need to focus on this season coming up. So yeah, but the first 10 minutes were very kind of a bit awkward at times, but I would sit here and say that after that it was pretty impressive. You know, it wasn't the greatest performance, let's be honest, but there was things that looked a lot better than what we've seen in the past night. What, so we say, what, 6 months? Yeah, 6 months, I think we say. So obviously the game looked like it was playing as 4-3-3 in that first half. We had obviously Solomon in goal, Boy Kemper left back, Jimmy Dunn and Ronnie Edwards at the back with, I believe it was Adamson at right back. Now, bit of a rotation it was. I don't know if it was a 2 in the midfield or an actual 3. It looked like more of a 3 the way Harvey Vale was playing. So it was Vale, Madsen and Isaac. And then it was Sato and it was Burrell and I believe it was Daniel Benny all up front. So the attack wise was pretty impressive. You could see why we've brought in Charles and this other keeper. You know, the way he looks like he's playing the ball, he wants to focus more on, I would say, long balls a lot. You know, we were seeing a lot of them balls going towards the forwards. We were, you know, in the runs with Sato, Daniel Benny and Burrell. You know, Burrell had a chance or two, he did, which was quite impressive, but we was kind of shaky as well at times, you know. And pretty much I would sit here and say that the scoreline I wasn't really fussed about with the 0-0, but I was more fussed about in the sense of how we performed. You know, the first game preseason is always going to be like understanding if there's anything new, but for what I saw, you know, the side is a stronger side than it was when we was last season at preseason, and the players that he's taken, obviously he's learning to see who's going to be breaking through to the first team and going on from there. Now, obviously, Daniel Benny looked really good at times. Sato looked a lot better when he was cutting in. And obviously the midfield as always, you know, Adamson wasn't really running forward as much, but Boy Kemper was. And the second half obviously happened. There was changes in the second half. And I believe Kone was on. Paul Smith. It was Paul Smith and I'm trying to remember who was on the right now. I generally can't remember who was on the right. My apologies. I know Pierman Chair and I can't remember who the Varane. I think it was Varane. Yeah, it was Varane. And then obviously the back line, Solomon was still in goal. Then you had Brew, and obviously at right back you had Amadou Mbenge, and the two centre backs was Morrison, and I believe it was, I don't think it was Tylon Smith. I can't remember who the other centre back was. No, Jake Clark-Salter. That was it. My apologies. So, look, positive notes is this. Paul Smith looked incredible. I would say my stars right now that I really want to focus on in preseason, it looks like we found kind of a good trio in midfield that looks really sharp. I really liked to join watching Isaac yesterday. I don't know if you guys did, but Isaac looked really, really good. I don't know whether I should sit here and say we've maybe found our partnership in Isaac and Madsen. You know, Isaac obviously has had experience in Europa League or Conference League in European Championship. So personally for me, these two looked really good, but even Vale looked really good when playing in the same way with them. Look, obviously Vale was more of an attacker, Madsen is the box-to-box guy, and Isaac looked really good as a defensive midfielder. He did. I really enjoyed watching Isaac play yesterday. It really looked really good. I think there was positive signs with the tackling, a lot of the time interceptions as well, the passing, the movement, and they were communicating really well in midfield. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on Isaac a lot this preseason to see what he's doing, because obviously we still have Kieran, Morgan, Varane, all three of them that can play in that same role. So it's going to be very interesting to see them three. Harvey Vale looks really good. Obviously Chair, Harvey Vale, same type of player in the attack wise, and Chair obviously was taking the ball from basically his own half and bringing it in to our into the attacking half, which he usually does. Paul Smith was brilliant, but I just feel like that right side, obviously Amadou Mbenge is brilliant and everything like that, but I still feel like we need a bit more strength on that right side. I do, you know. In the first half, obviously we had I'm trying to remember who we had on the right side. It was Daniel Benny. You know, Daniel Benny looks very, very good, but there was some sort of lack of shot quality that we haven't seen from him in a while. So it's I feel like the right side is something we need to look at a lot more. Obviously, I know we didn't play Poku. I know we didn't play, you know, Dembele's obviously at not gone with the squad, but I think it's positive to see that we look strong in midfield in the middle. So defensive wise, ability, obviously Jimmy and Ronnie are looking like they're going to be the number ones in our team. You know, Liam looks like he's going to have an opportunity to stay. I also think Jake Clark-Salter, if he can stay fit this season, that's a positive. I also think, you know, Solomon, you know, the thing with Solomon is the only reason why I think he was playing was because obviously the fitness test to Charles and Ward. But I honestly still think that Solomon looks a bit shaky. He did have a bit of a nerve where he did pass the ball to the opposition, and that really kind of annoyed me. But apart from that, I don't think the goalkeeper got tested that much. It was more the fact being that we was controlling in the middle quite a bit, and we was attacking with Burrell and Kone, but even the shot quality was not great. One thing I will say is what I really did enjoy as well was Obuku when he came on. He looked really good. He looked like he can probably be a good substitution, or if he does do better than Burrell or Kone or whatever, then we have a lot of attackers and midfielders and defenders on our side that look very strong enough to play in this league. Obuku, you know, we obviously have to wait till the whole preseason to honestly say whether Julian is going to keep them on for the season or send him out on loan for experience. But Obuku does look pretty decent. Like I said, ones to watch out for: Jalen Pearman, Isaac, I would say Obuku, and probably also Daniel Benny as well. You know, Brew, I feel like he's not quite there yet, or Saniolu. You know, they both signed professional contracts now, so congratulations to them. But I still think they need a bit more experience. Now, if we do see loan moves for these guys, hopefully they're not National League loan moves. Hopefully they're League 2, so that they have a better chance to even improve. You know, Emerson Sutton hasn't, I don't think, has gone to this tournament with us. Or sorry, not tournament, tour, I should say. But Emerson Sutton is another player that I would love to see break through into that squad, and also possibly even go out on loan for some experience again. But I think any one of our players that do go out to Wickham or someone like that, they will probably shine the next season for us. You know, they'll be very, very important for the regime of wherever we're going with the youth development. But I would say right now, Isaac looks likely he could be in that sub bench or even the first team choice for next season. I'm very shocked to see how he really did yesterday. You know, he was really on point. I'm really happy to see that he's given these kids an opportunity in pre-season. You know, Saniolo came on, very good dribbler, very good runner on the ball for the academy, and it's good to see that he's trusting these young kids to give them an opportunity and see where they go in the next couple of weeks, you know. But far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to judge that first performance on a 0-0, but the positives, like I said, you know, Isaac, the free in midfield looked brilliant at times. You know, we were Sato. Do you know what? I'm looking forward to watching Sato this season. I really am. I think Sato is going to be one to shine, one to watch for. You know, Sato, you know, the one thing that I was really worried about was the physicality of the championship for him because of obviously what he's going through. But when you look at compared to Paul Smith and Sato, the physicality is the same, but I feel like they need to use their strength to defeat that. And Paul Smith does that already. You know, he's a solid heart, mate, honestly. You know, and Sato, you know, we see him a lot of the time where he runs down the wing and stays wide, but when he was cutting in yesterday, he looked really decent, really good at times. So I'm really happy to see that. You know, I hope to see more of it for next season in pre-season. But yeah, I'm hoping for a lot more positives in this preseason, and we're going to concentrate on certain young development in this rest of the games that we go through. So yeah, but apart from that, yesterday's game, which obviously they didn't even really have an interview with Julian about it, so I was a bit confused. The lads are actually out today having some fun, which they deserve. You know, team bonding skills is what Julian says. But all around, it was a great watch along, man. Honestly, everyone enjoyed themselves. It was good to be back watching the football of QPR. You know, even though England did win yesterday in a tough way of winning, but the positives is that QPR are back in pre-season, and yeah, it's going to look good for the next couple of weeks for our watch-alongs. You know, the only watch-along we're probably going to be missing is the 1 p.m. kickoff one. I can't remember who the team is, but yeah. But apart from that, what I will say is, let me just say what H Football says. I heard that Dele Alli was at the training ground a few days ago. Was that just bullshit? I don't know. It was just one Twitter post that could be bullshit. I'm not too sure, but I'm not gonna speak on it because I don't know nothing about it. You know, unless someone tells me about it, which I trust. I can tell you much more. But moving on from youth talent and obviously pre-season games yesterday against Vienna, Varane obviously had a bid from a French club. I think it was Saint Etienne. They haven't revealed the price tag of what the bid was, but it has been rejected. It was rejected, I believe, in the morning of when the game yesterday. The word is it could be between 4 to 5 million, I think. But I think the club want to keep him, but also the price has to be right if we're going to let a player go. You know, they rate Varane very highly, QPR do, and they're saying about 7 to 8 mil holding off. So, which is about right. You know, look, Varane came into the club from Girona in Spain, and, you know, to be a bit of weight on his name as well, because obviously he's the stepbrother to Raphael Varane. You know, they're two different players and they play in two different positions. But Varane obviously came into the club when Marty was there and had a tough couple of first games. You know, he got sent off at Blackburn, he did, where he looked really good in that game and he got sent off. But after even coming back off that, he looked phenomenal for the rest of the season. Varane did. You know, he was winning balls back. He was that ball-winning midfielder, which was very good for us. So Marty was performing him very, very well in that season. Last season, Varane, though, was not exactly amazing. You know, there was times that he had good games, but I would sit here and say the downfall of Varane last season was pretty much when he got injured in against Sheffield Wednesday. So his injury to Sheffield Wednesday last season looked really much of his downfall, and even when he came back from injury, it didn't look great. So for what I would say right now, Varane in pre-season is going to be a big focus on to see what happens. You know, he doesn't want to leave, otherwise we would have heard bad comments about anything that he was saying for the club. But he looked really really interesting to a season ago, and I really still like him. I think Varane still has potential. You know, everyone has their off seasons, and I feel like Julian just needs to get him back to his best. And I feel like when we do obviously get some players in the next couple of weeks, maybe even the next couple of days, you never know, I just hope they find the right position for Varane, because even though he's a very technical defender in the sense of winning the ball back, I also still think he could be a potentially fit the role of what Maddison does as well, in the sense of a box-to-box midfielder. I wouldn't compare him to be the same type of player because they're two different players, but I still think Varane can be on the attack, because when we watched him against Leicester, when Marty in the FA Cup, he looked very good in that game. He looked like the box-to-box midfielder that we needed at the time, and the goal he scored was phenomenal, you know, and that's what box-to-box midfielders do. They don't hesitate to shoot, and it's brilliant to see that. And I still have faith in Varane. I will never give up on that player. You know, these players that we've signed with Christian Nuri in charge have been excellent and phenomenal, in my opinion. I have a highly rated every business that we've done since Christian Nuri, and I so hope to see Varane a bit more this season. I don't want him gone, I don't want him sold, because I honestly still think there's something there. But I will sit here and say that if the right price comes in, I wouldn't be surprised if something happens. You know, Varane seems to be happy at the club, and that's about it. You know, nothing has been said to even put any negative response on the club, but this is QPR. We keep things secretly, so you never know what will happen. But yeah, that bid has been rejected by the board. Like I said, 4 to 5 million, I think it would have been, from St. Etienne. It is in France. You know, Varane may want to go to France eventually. I'm not too sure, but I would love to see him stay at the club until that time comes where he wants to go. And I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to tell him to get out of the club or whatever, you know, because at the end of the day, he's an exceptional player for QPR. So yeah, but with Varane, obviously that news, there's not much to really say on the fact that, you know, yesterday's performance with Varane was a bit shaky at times, like I said. But yeah, the main thing right now with the club that's more like serious is a lot of people are going on about obviously the squad that has gone and the people that have not gone with the squad. So obviously the players that haven't gone, obviously Dembele, Collie, Cooper, Sella, I believe Santos hasn't gone. I also believe right, let me pull up on Twitter quickly. I do apologize. Give me a second. I'm just going to pull up this thing on Twitter. Give me a second, people. Hopefully you're all having a good evening. Hopefully you're not too hot today. Alright, we're on the QPR Twitter page right now, and I'm just going to scroll down to see if we can find the squad that obviously went with to Austria. Here it is. So the Austria squad that went obviously is there, but the people that missed out was Dembele, Collie, Lakesh and Santos, Zancella, Cooper and Bonner. So far as I'm aware, I know on Twitter a lot of people have been very questioning with what's been said, with obviously what got posted on who's not going. Now, like I said, in the bottom left corner, it does say continuing athletic and physical development at TSG Training Center. Now, those 4 players under that, and I honestly do believe these are 2 sections. I don't think it's all together. I believe it's 2 sections. Otherwise, it would have been joined together. Dembele, Colli, and Lakesh and Santos are obviously still physical development, right? Now, on the other side, on the right, it says in ongoing discussions regarding their futures, which is Zancella, Cooper, and Bonner. Now, we know Cooper, obviously, a bid has been accepted for 500 grand. It's gone a bit dead. It should have been signed by now if he was going. I'm not too sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has gone by the end of the week. Zancella, I'm not too sure about. Everything's been a bit quiet for him. The last news that I got about Zancella, it was pretty much to do with him wanting to leave the club and the club wanting him to go as well. Obviously, the club, I don't know if it's going to be a part of on loan again or not. But you know, Zancella, I felt like he got mistreated, in my opinion, at the start of the season, where someone's just had a newborn baby and then been told that they have to go out on loan, which I didn't like. But obviously, this is how Julian wants to, you know, certain player, and that's why we brought in obviously Burrell, Kone, and the others. So yeah. Murphy, like I said, Murphy Cooper. Now with the Bonner, the Elijah Dixon Bonner one is obviously interesting because he hasn't featured for us for a long time, and I do believe he will be leaving. And I also got a funny feeling that it could be one of them things, if they do not get the price that they want for him and he doesn't sell, I reckon they will terminate contracts, or he will ask for his contract to be terminated, just like what happened with Taylor Richards last season on deadline day. So I wouldn't be surprised with that, if with what is going to happen. But continuing with, obviously, continuing athletic and physical development, I honestly, look, the biggest talk right now is Colli. You know, Colli apparently, everyone is saying that he's not happy at the club. He doesn't want to be at the club now. He wants to go. He wants to leave. But as far as I'm aware, is when a club hears that from a player, I would sit here and say, personally, is that they would not feature that player in any media whatsoever. I personally think he's just injured at the moment and he hasn't passed his fitness test, and he needs to get the fitness test sorted, and that's why I think he hasn't gone to Austria. And that's why I also think why certain players have gone, like Saniolo, and also in who's the other guy, Alfie Lloyd. So that's what I see it as. I don't think Colli's going to leave. I think Colli stays. You know, a lot of people saying on Twitter that his dad, who is his agent or whoever it is, wants him to leave QPR because he's not getting first team. You know, people are saying as well that the right price, obviously, is teams interested in him. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if there is teams interested in him, because Colli is a very talented kid. You know, I want him to stay at QPR. I really do want him to stay at QPR because he's very, very quality in the thing that he does different to other strikers. You know, he has very good flair. He can get past players. He's very good at dribbling compared to other players that we have, and he's got a fair shot on him for sure, and he's very good at placing the ball. You know, the only thing I would say that's a weakness for him is being in the air, you know, but he has scored quite a few headers from low. So personally, I would love to see Colli stay. I want him to stay, but if the club is there, if there is an incident in the sense of where they feel like there's been some sort of negativity and they're waiting for him to go and they're trying to sell him on, it's probably for a certain amount of price. But as far as I'm aware, I would not put any hate on a player or hate on a club just yet, or even at all completely, until the truth comes out. You know, personally, I feel like there might be a bit of a dark thing there, but I still think Colli has a future at QPR, personally. So yeah. With obviously Dembele, you know, he seems to obviously get back into fitness. There was also talks that they might let him go, but I don't know. But yeah, his ACL, obviously when you have an ACL injury twice, it's really bad. But he looks like he's back on the training ground at is it, I can't remember the training ground's name now, TSG. But yeah, Lakesh ACL again. I think Lakesh obviously is an important member for our team, but the problem is if we do bring in Harry Amas, who's a left back on loan, but I think that would have been done ages ago. I personally do, if they feel like Lakesh was going to be sold or released or what. You know, a lot of people said that Lakesh was on his final contract last season, and we was waiting to hear if he was going to sign a new one. I'm not too sure. But Santos is another one that's interesting, because Santos is a Brazilian right back but can do an attacking job as well at the same time. And for me, I like Santos. I do. I think he's an interesting player. You know, can he defend? I'm not too sure, because I haven't really seen him do a defensive job. I've mainly seen him more of an attacking midfielder, as in the right midfielder, I should say, which Harvey Vale can play. But in the category where they've put him, I would believe possibly if he doesn't get sold, he's staying, and obviously a very interesting scenario with what happens with him if he stays. You know, I think all them players are at an age where they definitely need to be in the first team now. I don't see them in at all development stage. You know, Collie has had 2 seasons with QPR's first team, and it's both been exceptional. Obviously, he had a shaky start when he came into the club, and obviously last season was quite shining for him. You know, I really enjoyed watching him. Don't know about you guys, I thought he was brilliant. So yeah, I personally think Collie, no issues there. I'm hoping, and I'm just hoping as well that whether they issue him with another contract or not, I don't know, but it could be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of days. I reckon something will be announced real soon if he is going to go, or majority of them players. So yeah, but that's pretty much sums up the whole squad that has obviously been left out of the Austria tour. You know, Pierce Charles came in. We spoke about Pierce Charles on Thursday night. We did, and also Ward. You know, 2 decent keepers. You know, Charlie Warren and Solomon both went to Austria as well. You know, these players obviously didn't play yesterday, and some of them wasn't even on the bench for some of it, and probably because of fitness. Really, fitness is a big majority of it. You know, it's good to see 2 keepers, like I said, in the squad that look like they can play the Julian way with the long balls. And a lot of you, well, not a lot of you, some of you did comment about they can see why these keepers have come in now. So yeah, but I would sit here. Alfie Lloyd is another player as well, obviously on loan last season when he was at Lincoln City. He did an okay job at Lincoln, and obviously he's been put into this now, and maybe, you never know, Julian wants to keep him. Julian has seen very impressive pre-season or fitness tests out of him, seeing him back, and hopefully, you know, on that right side he might do something, because he was playing on the right yesterday, which was very, very good. But you know, at the end of the day, we have a good squad. You know, I wouldn't say it's a bad squad, but I would say it's in between good and not just quite at excellent yet level yet. You know, we still got a lot of players to see on that pitch that haven't played, you know, but the shining for me yesterday was Isaac. Honestly, I'm very happy to see him on that field. You know, we haven't really seen him in the first team apart from the last home game of the season last season, but that game yesterday, Isaac looked really impressive to me. Very impressive. I got nothing negative to say about that midfield. I got a funny feeling Madsen, Isaac and Vale will obviously have another opportunity to impress. If it is, you never know, 4-3-3 could be the formation next season, with them 3 starting pretty much as the first team midfield. You know, Chair is going to be always a big fan at QPR. You know, he's a fan's favourite technically. But, you know, the reason why Julian likes so many players is because he likes to have challenges in a team that he could pretty much choose from there. I wasn't going to talk about it today, But moving on from the team, I would say fitness as well. You know, I'm hoping injury-wise, you know, Kone did go down yesterday in the final minutes of the game. And obviously they ended the game to do with that. But nothing has been said about his injury yet. It didn't look really great the way he was on the ground. But I'm hoping they announce something soon. You know, Kone, to have an injury right at the start of preseason, I'm not very happy with it. You know, it needs to be looked into if it is serious. I'm just hoping the ones that we've missed last season do not get injured either as well. So, you know, Burrell is an important figure to us. You know, I would say Ilya Scher is a big figure to us. Madsen, Kieran Morgan, if something bad happened to him, that would be a nightmare. You know, Poku again. You know, we haven't really seen the shining lightning armor of Poku actually on that team yet. You know, Smith and Vale both have had injuries as well with Varane. So if you think about it, that's pretty much our first starting lineup that's got injured. So, you know, we got to kind of keep the fitness going. You know, defensive wise, we were lucky to have a couple of good defenders to replace Clark Salter when he got injured and stuff like that. You know, Tylon Smith still growing, still got a lot to learn, and we hopefully will see something different with him with challenging wise. You know, the tackles that he was pulling off last season wasn't great. You know, he had one good game in which was Plymouth Argyle, but I don't have any bad things to say about Tylon. Tylon is a development player who's literally come from South Africa, and it's his first official season pretty much with the squad. And, you know, it's going to be difficult for him to develop and adapt in one quick season, you know. And hopefully next season, if he does get the opportunities that he gets given, then fair dues. You know, obviously we've lost Steve Cooper now in experience-wise, but we still need to look in the market for some sort of players that would help us. You know, right now, I think we need another leader to help Madsen, but yeah, it's down to see what Julian does. At the end of the day, Julian is the head coach. And also, there still hasn't been any conversation or any like news on assistant managers. You know, Kevin Betsy could be a good shout, like I keep saying. But Kevin Betsy, to me, should stay in his role, because I think Kevin Betsy's brilliant in helping these players develop as well, especially with the young talent. You know, but I also still do want to see you know, one of the assistants that Julian Stefan has had at Strasbourg and Rennes with him at QPR. You know, there is one guy that I really admire of, but I can't think of the name again. It was like Broaden or something like that, who he's worked with before. But Julian obviously has to choose who he wants, you know, whether the club actually bring in someone that they want to work with him or someone that they can promote into that role. But right now, I just want to see something more intriguing that Julian wants, because this is all about Julian this season. I want Julian to have his season, his players, his style of play that he can suit to the players that he gets in, and obviously get an opportunity to just stay in the top 10. And that's what our aim is, top 10 next season. It would be a shame to see us obviously finish below top 10, but at the end of the day, you know, for the last couple of seasons, we've been really bad with relegation performances and stuff like that. You know, every season's going to be a challenging one for us, because each season now, any team that gets relegated is that they've got a £100 million squad on them, where they've gone to the Premier League, got relegated with the players such as, for example, West Ham. You know, I know they've just sold certain players to certain clubs for big money, but they still have some very good talent there, you know, and something that's going to struggle. You know, not just West Ham, though, as well as with Burnley. You know, Burnley have lost Scott Parker, but they still have a very good squad. You know, the last time they were in the Championship, when they played us at home, we got battered completely. And that wasn't great either. You know, the next club is Wolverhampton. You know, Wolverhampton is another club that has spent money on certain players. You know, they've just got rid of Rob Edwards, and in the most, I would say, rude way, if you want to, or disrespectful way. And no head coach deserves that, but he did leave a club that he was doing well for a club that was truly he admired and was obviously loved, you know, because he did belong to Wolverhampton. You know, I think he said he was a Wolves boy. So yeah, but these three clubs are going to be very big challenges for us next season to play against. You know, we've obviously had teams that have been relegated that we have beat, but you know, we need to be on point with it. You know, I just don't want to see performances. I want to see a lot more in the cup runs and stuff like that this season as well, which was why we brought in Julian anyway, because he's very good with the squads and the youth squad as well. You know, I'm not saying he is going to develop all of our young players to be Ballon d'Or winners or Champions League winners, but we have some good shouts there for future players to be playing in big clubs. Like, for example, you know, Isaac looks like one of them players. You know, Burrell could be one of them players. But I wouldn't say Burrell as a PSG player. I'm just saying he could do well at a Sunderland or at a Coventry City. You know, Coventry City clearly are looking at certain players to basically keep them into that league. But you know, when we eventually do get up with Julian, I do want to see some signings like what Sunderland did, that were not big spending money, but realistic signings that would do well for us to keep us in that league. You know, look, for example, Xhaka. You know, having a Xhaka there is kind of giving them that leadership in midfield to understand what the Premier League was about. You know, we had Joey Barton, for example. You know, he was a very professional player in the Premier League, but was he right for us? I don't know, because our best player was scared of him, you know, and we don't really want to see that on the field. So there's my little rant anyway for today. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, let's build this team around Julian this season. It looks very, very exciting. I actually no one's commenting on the chat today. Everyone's pretty quiet and just listening. You know, we've got 14 viewers today, and not everyone's talking today. I don't know why. Everyone's quiet. Everyone must be tired from yesterday. But yeah, apart from that, there's not much else to get into. I would say we've covered everything for this week. Hopefully there's some more news this week for transfers or anything to do with QPR that we can go on about. But apart from that, we'll be there on Saturday. We'll be live on Saturday, I think it is, or Friday. We will be for the next preseason game in Austria. I think it's actually Friday. Let me just double check for you guys so that we can schedule that in for you lot know what we're doing. I'm just seeing if there's any latest news as well from anyone for QPR, but nothing really, nothing saying there. You know, next game for us is clearly Thursday will be live, 16th of July, 5:30 kickoff. We'll try and be online for 5 o'clock. It's going to be good, going to be exciting. You know, hopefully we can have better performance and see more goals. You know, the last preseason with Julian wasn't exceptionally great seeing goals, but we did see a different team that came out against Preston. So preseason he might not take serious. He might just use it to basically see fitness levels, who ain't right, who needs to go out on loan, who needs experience, type of things there. So yeah, but I think the only thing that I will end it on is you know, position wise, you know, I still think we need a right back in this transfer window. Terry Devlin for me is the only shout that I can see at the moment. I know Seed has said and mentioned a couple of players, but the only two right backs that have actually been caught an eye on QPR really is the one that Millwall's chasing in France in League 2. Can't remember his name, but we did talk about it on last week's show, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, right back scenario. Looking at Isaac, I don't know if we need a backup midfielder unless we send him out on loan. But apart from that, maybe a backup left back if we get rid of players. But I also think that right attacking side is a bit weak. And maybe we need to look at that as well. You know, bringing in a right winger. And that's probably why the rumours have been coming in about signing this Moroccan guy on the right. So yeah, I know we're still interested in a central midfielder. There's always been talks on Twitter for us apparently putting bids in that have been rejected. But we'll see what happens this week, and whatever news we get. If it's very much big news in the sense of long, like loads of things to get into, it will be a live stream again this week. It won't be a pretty much video, because that would just be hard to just record and edit for you guys. I'd rather just go live and just talk about it with you guys in the chat. Simon's in the chat. Hi, do you think we will play all the squad in 2 halves for the next one? Yeah, I think Charles and Ward will both be in there. I think Solomon will have a rest or on the bench. You got to remember, we only had 3 players yesterday on the bench, you know, and Solomon played both halves, you know. But the positive thing I would say and sit here and say is this, you know, Chair, when he came on, or when he was on the second half, he was the captain at that time. So Julian clearly sees him as an important player still, and that's the positive about it. So yeah. Sorry, I got a bit of a dry mouth. Been a warm day today. Not as extravagant as what it has been all freaking week. Hopefully all of you are drinking plenty of water and stay okay. But yeah, been very quiet. You lot are very quiet today. Honestly, you lot are very quiet. It's very rare. Obviously, I think everyone was obviously watching yesterday and not expecting another live stream today. So yeah. Right, we're gonna leave it there though for today. We are. Hopefully you're all okay for that. Like I said, any important news, anything else that comes out, we'll go live with it if it's a lot more than say 2 or 3 subjects. And like I said, if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing and what I'm saying or whatever with QPR, go follow my socials. We're live on Insta. Well, we're on Insta, we're on TikTok, we're on Twitch, and we're also on, I believe, Twitter. And why am I saying believe? I definitely know we are on Twitter. Forget about Twitch if you're not interested in all of that. But they're the main things that we post on. We post really pretty much, try to post every day. Like I said, we're always live at 7 p.m. on a Sunday. That's the regime now of this season, and whatever else happens in the next couple of weeks. Do you know what? I'll say this: if you want to see more of the live QPR lives, then we'll do probably two live shows. Probably one on a Sunday, one on midweek or whatever it is. So yeah, but apart from that, we're gonna end it there. Hopefully you're having a lovely evening. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to. It helps the channel out pretty much all the way. You lot are killing it at the moment, so much love to you guys. Shout out to Seed, H Football, and Simon for the chats today. All them stars as well, whoever's in the chat, in the views as well, who's watching. But yeah, we'll leave it there for today. Hopefully you have a great evening. Peace, love, positivity as always, and we will catch you real soon, people. Have a lovely evening.